Hi friends, I'm Ryan Hembree, and today's video is special because I'm joined by my friend from Down Under, Gary Bates. Now, this interview is over an hour long, but I'm just going to share with you a 6-minute clip that's relevant to the topic of today's video, which of course is the identity of the Pharaoh of the Exodus. Now, even though Gary is best known for his research into the UFO phenomenon, he's also done a ton of research into Egypt and the Exodus, and has even led tours there through Creation Ministries International. Here's Gary.
So I talked about starting with scripture. So let's just take that episode. We can get the date of the Exodus from the Bible. 1 Kings 6:1, right? 1 Kings chapter 6 verse 1. Talks about from the time the temple was constructed was 970 years after the Hebrews left Egypt. So it's around about 1446 or 1445, depending which time of the month of the year temple construction occurred. So when we look at that in Egyptian chronology, Egyptian chronology needs to be condensed. So we can't just take 1446 and say, where do we put that? Because we know Manetho's chronology is inflated. But it's more likely inflated in the very oldest parts where we have the least amount of records. From what's called the New Kingdom onwards, 18th dynasty forward, we've got every pharaoh in their tomb in the Valley of the Kings. After that, something called the Third Intermediate Period. We've got all those pharaohs, they were Libyans. Then we have the Sayites, the Persians, who came and conquered Egypt, and then we have the Greeks. So there's no room from that 18th dynasty up until the Romans came to chop out hundreds and hundreds of years. So we believe it to be accurate from the 18th dynasty onwards to within a few tens of years. There's a bit of wiggle room. There's sometimes overlapping dynasties between father and son. So around about that 1400 BC period, we've got to look for characters that fit the biblical narrative. So Moses was raised in all the ways of the Egyptians. He kills an Egyptian and he flees, doesn't he? He goes to Midian. It says Pharaoh tried to kill Moses. Moses is a member of the royal household. Remember I said the royal household, the Pharaoh is a god. This is royalty. I mean, royalty as in divine royalty. Not just anybody can kill a member of the royal household, so it's Pharaoh. Stephen then tells us Moses was in the Midian for 40 years, and what does it say? God tells Moses, go back, those who tried to kill you are dead. So that would indicate that Pharaoh, and maybe, Pharaoh's not going to kill him physically himself, he's going to maybe enlist soldiers to do it. But we got to look for a Pharaoh that must have reigned for at least 40 years. And there are only 2 pharaohs in the whole of the New Kingdom that reigned for 40 years. Moses III, 18th dynasty, or Ramses II, Ramses the Great, the Hollywood Ramses, Yul Brynner. But he's about 200 years too late. It's called the late Exodus idea. So we have a king that reigns for 40 years. Okay, so we found a king, fits the biblical narrative. But when Moses and Aaron come back to Egypt, that pharaoh's dead, right? So they encounter a new pharaoh. And that pharaoh, according to the biblical narrative, cannot be the firstborn son of the previous pharaoh, because when the 10th plague comes, prior to the Exodus, it kills all the firstborn in Egypt, and it actually says, including the son of the Pharaoh. Mm-hmm. But if Pharaoh was a firstborn son himself, he would have died, but he didn't. Amenhotep II is the second-born son of Thutmose III. His brother, Amenehat, predeceased him. But then there's another issue we have to look for, because when the 10th plague comes, the son of Pharaoh dies. So if Amenhotep II is not the firstborn, he's the second-born son of Thutmose III, his firstborn son can't inherit the throne. And guess what? Amenhotep II's firstborn son did not inherit the throne. It was his second-born son called Thutmose IV. So round about the time where we believe Egyptian history is accurate, and we can plug in our 1446 Exodus date, are there characters that the Bible, we can deduce from the Bible would fit that period? And there is, and they are the only ones. 40-year reigning, 54 years Thutmose III reigned for. Second-born son inherits the throne, second-born son inherits the throne. And then around about 40 plus years after the Exodus, we have the first mention, right, with a king named Merenptah. He mentions the nation of Israel on a stela. You can see it in the Israel Museum, and it's the first time in all of history. Even we don't have Israeli monuments that mention the name Israel as old as this one we have in Egypt. But it all occurs after this date. So after this period I'm talking about, suddenly we're hearing about these invading Hembree taking over the vassal states in Canaan that were ruled by the Egyptians. Who were the Hembree? Who does that sound like? Hebrew. Now Hembree is a word that means vagabond or robber or nomad, but the Egyptians, like the Hebrews, were very good at punning on people's names, right? So it likely also fits, sounds like Hebrew, but it also fits the status of the Hebrews and what they were doing. And all these vassal states are writing back to the kings that are now ruling in Egypt, saying the Hembree have taken the very cities of the king, help. And the Egyptians are willing to let all their countries go that they rule, that are paying tribute and giving them money. Just hands off. Don't touch them, don't go there. And all of that happens after, not ever before those kings I just mentioned. It only happens after that. So that's a great marker in time.
So as Gary pointed out, based on chronology and other important factors, Amenhotep II was probably the pharaoh of the Exodus, not Ramses the Great, as is often portrayed in movies and books. And if you want to get a hold of the book that Gary mentioned, it's called Tour Egypt, and you can get it from Creation Ministries International. And their website is simply creation.com. And while you're there, you should also check out his other book about the UFO phenomenon called Alien Intrusion. Or if you prefer, he's also produced a video documentary by the same name. Also, if you'd like to see my whole hour-long interview with Gary, it is included on a video series we produced called A World by Design Part 3. On that set, I interview Gary and several other scientists and researchers. And to get a hold of that, just contact our ministry or go to BibleDiscoveryTV.com. It's even available there as a digital download, and I'll leave a link to all these resources in the description below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.